Party on, Sal.
Rock on.
Rock on.
Well, welcome back, Podcasters, to another episode of the Party on Johncast, a most excellent, rad, cool podcast dealing with theology, music, what we're drinking, and just all around awesome topics.
Absolutely. It is great to be here today. Where are we?
We are in a brew house.
A brew house. Which brew house?
Angry Eric's brew house.
Angry Erick in Hampton, New Jersey, hailing from Hampton, straight out of Hampton.
Straight out of Hampton.
I hear tell there is a T-shirt with that on it. So we are here in Hampton, New Jersey at Angry Eric's Brewing Company, and Angry Erick is actually joining us, though he is not the master brewer, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So, yeah.
So here we are with all this brewing equipment around us, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm the Reverend Sal Marco, a teaching elder in the Presbyterian Church USA, in the Presbytery of the Highlands, in the Validated Ministry of Hospice Chaplaincy.
And I am the Rockin' Reverend Todd Laddick, an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church of Greater New Jersey, serving a congregation in Newton, New Jersey, which used to be on higher ground than Sal. Sometimes on Wednesdays I hear that still is the case. But, you know, you can cry a river later.
Only when God ordains it.
You Presbyterian.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I hear tell we have a guest.
We do have a guest.
And who would this guest be?
We kind of already introduced him, but we have with us...
Angry
Erick.
Erick. Erick, introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Erick Hossing. I'm the owner of Angry Erick Brewing. My wife and I own it, I should say. And there's not too much more to it than that, but we own a brewery in northwestern New Jersey, and we're sitting in it now.
So rock on. We are. And I hear tell we are sipping on some pretty awesome brew.
We are.
Which brings us to our Brews segment.
Hey, guys. How do you know that God likes beer?
How, Sal?
Possibly Paul, but probably not, wrote about it in the book of Hebrews.
And that joke, for all who listen to us, will never cease.
Never stops.
And if you keep listening to us, that's on you.
It's on you.
I don't know what to say at that point.
But it's actually very apropos for where we are right now.
We are, because we are sitting in a brew house, in the one and only Angry Erick brew house. And right outside is the tasting room, and the Dragon's Lair is above, where there is currently an awesome rockin' trivia, thing going on. So that sounds pretty fun. And I was just sharing with Erick. I sometimes frequent this place on Thursdays and maybe Saturdays. And if I'm here on Thursday and the second night of Thursday is trivia night, that could be a thing. So. And that is the very awesome behind us. That is the very, very awesome Jess checking to make sure that we are hydrated. Or not.
We're not quite. I mean, I'm hydrated for a little while.
Well, hydrated for a little while.
I own a brewery, so that won't take very long.
That's right. So, here we are. And so what are we drinking? I guess we'll start with our guest.
Well, I'm drinking Troll Baby. It's a session IPA. So IPAs are obviously, for those who don't know, hoppier beers. Session just means it's lower in alcohol. It's not really that low in alcohol. Craft brews sessions usually mean around 5%, which is for people who don't drink craft beer. It's kind of like Budweiser. Mm-hmm. Guinness is actually a little bit lower. People think it's high, but it's really not.
Yeah.
It's just that it's a darker beer, so it's on nitro, so it's nitrogen carbonation, so it's a little more bubbly or thick. You don't have to hide when you pass me the beer. Thank you.
And that is the awesome Jess. Just give a shout out, Jess. Hi.
Hi.
So, yes. Anyway, so that sounds awesome. I have had the Troll Baby. It is delicious. I do like a good IPA. I do not like a not good IPA, and there is a difference. And Angry Erick only makes the good variety, thankfully. So, Sal?
I am drinking not an IPA. I'm drinking the Wake Up Again coffee porter. I've always been a fan of darker stouts and porters. Any beer, really, but...
you worked a full day, so a little extra coffee in there
extra coffee
might get you home on the drive.
He could use it.
I could use the extra caffeine.
And there's legit coffee in there.
Coffee.
So
there is, cold brewed coffee was added. So.
And you can taste it. I mean, it is delicious.
You can definitely taste it.
This is their 2020, right? Or 2019, which is it?
2020
release, which obviously 2020.
It was.
So it was released in 2021 in honor of 2020.
Yeah, it was a beer that we released as part of our anniversary party. We had 2 anniversaries within basically a month because we were dealing with obviously COVID, and so we couldn't have anniversary parties and stuff like that, or certainly couldn't have done it responsibly.
Sure.
I don't think we were shut down for the first party for 2019.
But 2020.
But by 2020, we definitely were. In 2019, we wouldn't have done a party regardless because of the timing of it. It was
you were just opening at that point this new location, right? I mean, you had been opened
in the
years.
summer,
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and for those who didn't know, Angry Erick was in a different location in Lafayette. I guess it was Lafayette, right? Or was it still Hampton?
It was Lafayette. Yeah.
It was Lafayette, and they were located there for the beginnings of their business. But in 2019, we're able to open up this new location in Hampton, which is bigger and better, and just it's awesome. So this is commemorating Sal's drink is commemorating 2020. And did you already have the party for 2021?
Yeah, we had that as well. So we did. So 19 we had our party. I should back up, correct myself. 2020 we did not have it because it was traditionally it was in February, but we were kind of trying to. We opened originally in February. Not a great time to have parties.
Probably not.
You pay for musicians, and in Northwest New Jersey, you might have 4 feet of snow drop on you, like happened last year. So we were trying to move it over towards our anniversaries happening more like when our building opened, our new building that we actually own, as opposed to where we were renting.
Sure.
But it was in June. And, of course, the pandemic was in full flight at that point.
At that point, right.
Right. Not that it's really over yet, but
here we are.
Yeah. We're
vaccinated,
getting better. We're vaccinated,
maskless. Look at this. This is a start, and we're actually fairly socially distanced around this table.
Yeah.
So this is a start. We're socially distanced, maskless in a brew house, drinking fine brew. With the co-owner of Angry Erick, and what more can be said?
Yep.
Which brings me to my drink, doesn't it?
It does.
I'm drinking something that I had first at the original location in Lafayette, and I loved it so much, and then the pandemic hit, and I haven't been back to Angry Erick ever since, just because I was in pandemic mode leading a church, and there wasn't much time for me, sadly, to go and have a social life. And so on this end of that, I'm beginning to get back out again into the community, and sure enough, right in time for our episode here, is one of my favorites from Angry Erick, which I had at the original episode, which is Viva Verde. Viva Verde is Spanish for the green life, right?
Yep.
Or living green, or
always green, I think.
Always green, or something like that.
My wife speaks better Spanish than I do.
She probably speaks better than me, too.
I can find the bathroom if somebody gives me directions.
Here's what I know. Cerveza una muy bueno, muy delicioso, muy caliente, because this is brewed with hot, and I say hot, jalapenos. Now, I understand it's brewed first with jalapenos that have the seeds and the pith removed.
Correct.
Because it would be only hot, it would only be good enough for people like me. And then you can, once it's brewed, you can add a jalapeno to it, and the alcohol just absorbs the spice from the jalapeno, which makes it more for people like me. So it is a phenomenal beer. It is delicious, refreshing, summer, but could have it any time of the year. That's my choice. So thank you, Angry Erick, for awesome beer.
Skull.
We're gonna do that right here. Yep, awesome.
I feel like we should have the Viking Vicar on with us.
The Viking Vicar belongs here. Now we have a third Mike, so to speak, who lives out in Illinois.
Well,
And he is of Viking heritage, and would love Angry Erick.
Feel like you'd like our overall theme here?
I think he would like the overall theme. Probably find some, hereditary bonding here. There's a lot to go on. I think that would happen here, and certainly the good brew.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you get somebody from Scandinavia in a place that has a long ship for a bar
But by the way, we are
with a full sail.
We'll do a panoramic picture of the full half Viking bar ship experience, which it is that. We'll do some pictures of the inside of Angry Erick so people can see it, and hopefully you're going to visit. That's the important thing. Us talking about how good the beer is does you no good. So come by and visit Angry Erick. But that is our Hebrew segment, which brings us, and I apologize ahead of time, to our most excellent music segment.
Pretty shocking every time.
That was a lot. Yeah.
Angry Erick edition.
Angry Erick.
That's right. That's right. Yes, that is a bit much. And I am happy to deliver every time. So, who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So, we were talking about this last episode of our love of heavy metal and metalcore. And for those who don't know, that Phinehas has dropped a new album called The Fire Itself.
Phinehas as opposed to Phineas and Ferb.
Yes,
Okay,
not the
okay.
Ferb.
Good.
And not the Old Testament.
Of course.
Well, based on the Old Testament character.
Of course.
But so yeah, they dropped a new album called The Fire Itself. So just in general, been listening to that album on repeat.
It's a great album. It really is.
It is. So go check it out on Apple Music, wherever you get music. But the song that I've been digging lately is called The Storm in Me.
Pull me out of the water, pull me out of the sea, pull me out of the water, don't let the waves take me. I walked on the
So I'll read you the lyrics real quick. I'm swimming like a stone. I'm swimming like the stone in my heart, watching everything fall apart. I don't want to drown alone. I don't want to drown alone in my dark. My lungs are filling until my chest wants to burst. I tried to carry all of it, but I'm at my worst. I thought I was strong enough to stay afloat, but when the storm rolled in, with the bitter wind, the waves broke. I don't want to drown alone in my dark. A free fall into the grip of the void that crushes my ribs. Your promise feels worthless. A mere thread sent down, it's not enough. When you're drowning, waves raise their thunder. I'm sent further underneath. I'm not strong enough to calm the storm within me. All of the weight I carry inside, every dagger at once in my mind, pulled under, screaming with the tide, left at the bottom, left behind. In all of this, I've only learned how to sink. I'm not strong enough to calm the storm in me.
Wow. Powerful.
Somebody needs a hug.
Somebody needs a hug and a good brew. Yeah.
So-
No. That's powerful, man.
Yeah,
Really
so-
powerful.
And it just kind of connects to that feeling that sometimes, even in the midst of knowing that the promises of God are with us and sustain us, we feel like we're drowning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And since it's not fair to always make the guest go first, I'll go next. And I've been, in honor, and we're a little late with this. We're recording this. We're early, but we're late. We're recording this on the 9th of September, just 2 days before the 20th anniversary of September 11th. And for our bonus podcast, along with a more relevant October-themed discussion of Columbus Day, will also include a brief discussion of where we were on 9/11, in honor of the 20th anniversary of that tragic event. But in light of that event, and realizing we never mentioned it when recording with Blake, no, I'm not drinking Angry Erick beer. But when we recorded with Blake, we didn't mention it because we were in August and not thinking of September. So here we are in September recording for August, and I'm going to mention the song that I've been listening to in this week in light of 9/11, and that's Undivided by Bon Jovi. Came out the year of 9/11, or the year following 9/11, and it was his reflection, John Bon Jovi's reflection, and the band's reflection on 9/11 and the things that rocked the world at that time. And there wasn't anybody in the world who didn't experience 9/11. It didn't matter whether you were American or not. People were just outpouring like support and prayer and love to America at a time where we really needed it. And so this song Undivided by Bon Jovi is a reflection on how everybody came together. Once we were divided, now we stand united. And it was a beautiful song at the time. 20 years later, it didn't age so well. And I love Bon Jovi, and I love the sentiment, and we were all feeling it in the moment. But it was in the moment, because once we got out of that moment and we got back to politics as usual and worse, we are not so united anymore. In fact, we find ourselves almost in worse shape than we were
I would say
before, and certainly in the aftermath of 9/11. Yeah, we were in worse shape now, because then we had a common enemy. Now we are the common enemy. We look at each other as the enemy, which is sad, and it shouldn't be, but it is. So, not to get too political there, that's my song, Undivided, Bon Jovi. Check it out.
All right, so I guess it's my turn. I can't say that I listen to all kinds of music. Anything from country to hard rock to, still have a CD somewhere with, things like Ice Cube and Public Enemy.
Heck yeah.
And mixed in with some Bob Marley and other reggae. And so I really can't say that I focus on one kind of music, because they all, to me, kind of like different kinds of beer, have their place and their time.
Right.
So lately, I don't know why, but I've been listening to a lot of Jackson Browne.
Well, I'm running down the road trying to loosen my load. I got 7 women on my mind. 4 that wanna own me, 2 that wanna stone me. One said she's a friend of mine. Take it easy.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, for those kids out there, he's kind of had his heyday in, I guess, the 70s, I'd say,
yeah.
Early 80s. Singer-songwriter, very lyrical, and does a lot of stories in his music. And just, Heidi and I were dealing with a lot, and he just has a kind of nice, kind of soothing, quiet, and given everything we're dealing with at home, that hit the spot in terms of us needing to lower the volume.
Sure.
Which
Sure.
was weird for me because, it seemed strange when Audio Slave came on and I decided to change the station because it was too amped up and
Understood, yeah.
we were dealing with Heidi's father and his eventual passing and caring for him, and there was a lot going on, and quieter music somehow hit the spot. We even went at one point to classical music, which really kind of freaked me out because I thought I was becoming my father then.
Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah, all of a sudden, and as funny as it sounds to, I guess it probably doesn't sound funny to musicians, but certain classical music was still seemed very active and powerful.
Yeah.
To the point where we're like, that's not the composer I want to listen to right now because
it's ramping you up in a way that
and maybe I'd never really listened to enough classical music to notice a distinction, but some of it's soothing and some of it is really ramps you up if you listen to it.
You can listen to soft classical and you can listen to quote unquote heavy metal classical. I mean, Beethoven is like heavy metal.
Oh yeah.
Like if you don't want to go to a dark, deep place, don't listen to Beethoven. Just don't. Mozart all the way. But seriously,
that is exactly what we determined. We were like, that's
listen
Beethoven. I need to move on to the next song.
Yeah,
because he was kind of
bringing
driving.
You there. Yeah, he's bringing you there. I mean, you're already there. You don't need him to bring you. So, but that is so true. Like, there is not one genre of music that doesn't speak to the soul. And I'm an eclectic music listener too. In fact, I was just listening to Eminem's original Slim Shady, Slim Shady LP session or whatever that was called, Slim Shady session or whatever. It's phenomenal stuff. Dre, Snoop, I don't necessarily understand or agree with the language or understand, the objectification of women in that culture or whatnot. But that's beyond the point because that is a reflection of the culture, and that culture has a particular historical background, which is steeped in racism and white flight and you name it. And you know what? They're expressing their reality. Yeah. I don't have to like it. I have to listen. That's the way I look at it. Yeah. And so I listen to people like Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and I get an understanding, or at least somewhat of an understanding of an experience that I could never have because of who I am and how I grew up. Yep. Just like you could listen to the blues or you could listen to country. You can listen to... You want to understand how politics have played out in the last 5 to 6 years? Listen to country music. It's not to say that those country stars even agree with the political views of any particular person, but you want to understand the common people who vote that way? Listen to that music and hear what is important to them. Because if you don't, you're ignoring them, and you're part of the problem. And that's the way I look at it. We can point fingers all day long at who's right and who's wrong, but if we're not a part of the solution, we're a part of the problem. And, I don't know how we got there, but we're moving on. Thank you for that sharing, Eric.
Brought up another point.
Oh, sure.
You mentioned that some of the music you thought you were turning into your father.
Yeah.
When my son was born, when Calvin was born, I found myself listening to the Beatles a lot. And the Beatles are my dad's favorite band.
Sure.
And I said, holy crap, I'm becoming my father. I became a father, and I turned into my father.
Yeah, and I've been listening to the Beatles, too, ironically, which is funny. But
weird how that happens. You turn into your parents.
You do.
Like early Beatles or late Beatles? Because I like the later stuff.
Yeah, I'm more of a later Beatles fan, though I could have written a better Yellow Submarine song. That's another thing. You have to kind of be where they were to understand the Yellow Submarine. And I'm not promoting that on the Party on John cast. No. But I get it. And I get it. But I am more of a later Beatles person. I'm more of a a later Beatles person, and that was me graciously accepting beer.
Yes,
But also, I have to say that some of the earlier stuff was pretty impressive too. I think the earlier stuff was like, "Hey, we're going to sell you to America," we're going to, and it was the big craze, and then they grew as artists. Yeah.
If I had to pick a favorite song, I think it'd be like Helter Skelter.
Helter Skelter, so good.
And it's been covered numerous times, I think, because of that. But such a good song, and so much deeper in my mind than the early stuff where, like you said, it was, they were selling them to, they were kind of a boy band who could play music.
They were the next big act.
I won't call them a boy band, but because they actually played instruments and stuff like that and wrote their songs. But they, there were plenty of 13-year-old girls screaming at every concert. So
absolutely, and those 13-year-old girls grew with the band, just like the New Kids on the Block or Backstreet Boys. They were their generation's boy band, just with a little more talent. I get talent in the sense of songwriting. Can't knock the talent of the dudes otherwise.
Other way.
No.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
I'm certainly not going to pretend I can dance like
I'm not
some
going
of these boy bands. So
definitely not going to dance
takes
like the
some
boy
talent.
bands. And that was just rocking out another beer. So, so let's bring us into our main topic, which is Angry Eric. In fact, we're going to call this... Let's call this Don't Get Mad, Get Angry. That's going to be our episode name. You've heard it here, and of course you'll have seen the name before you heard it here, but still, you've heard it here. Okay, so Eric, tell me what tell me the story of Angry Eric, however you want to.
All right. So we basically, Heidi and I started brewing together. We were living in the city. She was in graduate school for biochemistry. I was working at the Bronx DA's office as a prosecutor there.
So the city being New York.
The city being New York. I shouldn't be so
tri-state area.
Egocentric on a podcast when people from anywhere can. But New York City.
Right. I think they got it when you said Bronx. But.
Yeah. But we had a small, Mr. Beer kit that we started with that Heidi loves cooking and is a great, really, chef. But I won't say cook because she's better than that.
Amen. Well, listen.
Because she makes her own, she's the person that almost annoys you where she comes into a kitchen with hardly any ingredients and makes something fabulous out of it. But
so you're telling me that her craft doesn't just end with beer?
No, it started with cooking, and a lot of that, things like jalapenos in the beer, but also we have Mary Shroom, which has mushrooms and rosemary in it. A lot of it's inspired by cooking. And, beer is food.
It is.
At the end of the day. And I think for too long after Prohibition ended, and only the big breweries survived, this country had a long history of just kind of pretending that beer is a light Pilsner lager. And there's certainly a place for that in this country.
Beechwood.
Yeah.
Aged in Beechwood.
But, even without, Beechwood aging that Budweiser does, there's Coors and any number of other breweries that were quite big and still are, like Miller and some others that were primarily focused on one type of beer.
One type. Yeah.
We've done 60 to 70, probably 80 now, different beers at our brewery. There's a whole variety of beers you can do. And in our case, it's all heavily influenced by Heidi's cooking. And when we had that little one-bedroom apartment in Queens, it started in Manhattan, I guess, when we were in student housing there. And then once she left graduate school, the rent for the Upper East Side apartment was not going to happen, and we went to Queens and
Amen.
lived there for a while, and then we came to New Jersey, and our brewing habit, it started as something I would do while she'd cook, but then I'd turn my back and she'd start throwing ingredients into the...
So you were the one who started it,
Well,
but
she
it
got
grew
me
into her.
Yeah, she got me the Mr. Beer kit, but then it turned into... Every time I turned my back, she was like, why don't we add this? Why don't we add that? And she was always right, which is super annoying. But the beers
From
were
one
better.
husband to the other. All three husbands here. We get it. Sorry, Allison. Sorry, Bernie. Sorry, Heidi.
But, at a certain point, then we moved back to New Jersey. We weren't from New Jersey originally, but I went to law school here, so you kind of end up taking the bar in New York and New Jersey, and you end up in the tri-state area. So when we're tired of New York, I guess, and I didn't want to be pigeonholed into one kind of law, then we moved out here, and once we got a house, then we had more room for equipment, and so then we started brewing bigger and more frequently, and more than two people's livers should consume. So then we started giving beer to neighbors, and slowly, there was a change in the law in New Jersey that allowed a lot more small breweries to... Yeah, it's fine. Gotta make sure Jess keeps me hydrated.
Jess is awesome. Let me tell you. You do rock, Jess.
Thank you. So then we basically, just got too big for home brewing, and there was, like I said, some laws changed that made it a lot easier to open without having millions of dollars in backing.
Sure.
You were allowed to self-distribute after that law passed, which means you weren't opening a brewery and being forced to use a distributor to get your beer to the customers.
Right.
Where, obviously, if you're a brand new brewery and have no really customer base and nobody who likes you or knows about you, even because you're brand new,
Right.
and then you've got to negotiate a distribution contract with a distributor, you can imagine, and they know that there's no way you can get your beer to market without them, and there's 3 of them in this area that
Right.
you can negotiate with. You can imagine the kind of contractual power disparity that they had.
Absolutely. For sure.
So that changed with a new law that was pushed through by the New Jersey Brewers Guild, and to their credit, a lot of bigger breweries in New Jersey, they're not big, but local breweries in New Jersey who at the time pushed that through, in spite of the fact that really it didn't necessarily help them because they were already established. It did help them in the sense that they were allowed to have tasting rooms and sell a little more beer out of the tasting room and in the tasting room. But really, they did a lot in terms of pushing for and changing the law that didn't necessarily created competition for them.
Right.
And, candidly, we were some of that competition, I suppose, except we were so far north and west that nobody really knows where we
Right.
are. You mentioned Hampton Township. I should say we're in Newton, because there's another Hampton Township that's down near Somerset County, more mid-New Jersey.
Right. The Newton Hampton Township.
Yeah,
yes.
the Newton Hampton Township. Newton zip code. Like
Yep.
everything in New
Yep.
Jersey that
Like-
doesn't make sense.
No.
We have a post office that is Newton, but we're in Hampton Township.
That's right. Yes.
So, but fortunately we started small. Everybody thought we were insane starting a craft brewery in Sussex County. It was kind of historically kind of a, it's a rural county. There's lots of farms still, and
Yep.
most of the bars and restaurants served kind of the big 3 and assumed that was what people wanted, or it was assumed that nobody wanted anything else.
Sure.
So then we're trying to come in with craft beer, and fortunately, people did want craft beer.
There's a market for
And
it.
there's a market for it.
And beer hits
so-
every demographic, folks.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you're GOP Republican or far left commie liberal, to throw out pejoratives. It doesn't matter where on the spectrum you live. If you like beer, you like beer, and Angry Eric's providing it. And it's providing it to all people of all demographics. Yeah.
And one of the beautiful things about our tasting room, and I think, what we've built here, is we have all those people in the tasting room every day. And they can sit down and have a beer and talk to each other and get past some of the vitriol that's been going on in the country. There's always your outliers who, just are antisocial or angry at the world, and you're not going to convince them to sit down with the other side and talk something out.
Ever.
They're in their own dark space, and, you can't get them out. But 95% of people, you can get out of that space, and they can sit down and have a beer with a fellow American, and regardless of their political spectrum, enjoy themselves, talk about different things, even talk about politics, and go home and still be friends.
Amen. Boy, we need to get back to that. And actually, that's a good segue into the second part of this. So we've got the story of Angry Erik, and behind every great namesake for a brewing company is a master brewer by the name of Heidi. So we have to give credit to Heidi, who took Angry Erik's hobby and turned it into a profession.
Yeah. But, people always wonder why we named it Angry Erik. And, I'll be honest, the reason was we were looking for some name that kind of went along with our my Scandinavian heritage. And, you want the name to be somehow personal
and
to
memorable.
one of you, you know. Mm-hmm. And the Scandinavian thing and the Viking era, even though obviously, if you really look into the Viking era, they're kind of not the nicest people.
That's true.
But
we're promoting the nicer side of the Vikings.
Yeah.
The beer.
The fancy ships and dragons and stuff like that.
And the good ale.
Not
The Renaissance fair Vikings, not the actual Vikings.
Yeah, not
not
Leif Erikson take over the world Vikings.
Yeah.
Not the Bluetooth Vikings.
but the problem
not the
was
Minnesota Vikings either. I had to put that out there for you football fans. Sorry.
Well, and Minnesota was a problem because anytime we looked up some sort of Scandinavian heritage Viking theme, there's some brewery in Minnesota or Michigan who's named a beer that, who's named their brewery that. Like, you're not going to name yourself Thor's Hammer Brewery. Like, there's someone out there that beat you to it.
Because of the Vikings.
Because of the Vikings.
Of course.
And, so... But then we remembered that when I was a prosecutor in the Bronx, I was nicknamed Angry Erik. I don't think I was angry.
That's inside information right there, folks.
Yeah.
Angry Erik is not only the nickname, but the reputation, maybe undeserved, of the namesake of Angry Erik. So that's interesting.
Heidi will say it's deserved, but... So really, we named it kind of after that nickname.
Sure.
Which, again, I think I was framed by other prosecutors and nicknamed me that, but I would just, yell back at judges, and that wasn't very common amongst young prosecutors. And
Oh, gotcha.
so I got that nickname.
Well, that's actually, you know what? That is quite in the Viking spirit, actually. So, go you.
And
Yes.
I have a long face, so if I'm not smiling, I have resting Eric face,
So it's-
I can look like kind of intimidating and mean, and I don't always mean to do that.
and you're
It
really
just-
not. You know,
No,
I'm
I
sure
don't think
anybody
so.
gets mad. You're mean when you're mad, sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
When I'm mad, I'm intense, but not. I've never been really the guy who's out of control.
You're not
or,
a pillaging Viking.
No, I don't really understand people who punch walls. I think they're just being children, like
Amen.
that sort of angry, doesn't
He's a
make
mature,
any sense.
angry Eric.
That's right.
That's right.
I still use my words. to discuss things,
Maturely angry.
even if you're very incorrect.
Righteously angry.
Righteous anger.
Righteous
I guess,
anger.
yeah.
Yes. Don't be angry. Don't get mad. Get righteously angry. That's what we're going to call this now. That's right. Okay.
So Heidi, basically, though, if you're going to pick who's going to be the head brewer of the new brewery you just opened, it's going to be the person with a biochemistry master's from Cornell who
Of course.
been valedictorian everywhere she went.
And is a
basically.
chef in her own kitchen,
And
let
as a
alone elsewhere.
chef. Well, she's also a trained chef, too,
Yeah.
because after she left graduate school, because she kind of realized she didn't want to write grant proposals the rest of her life, and a lot of times once you get your PhD and you have a lab, then you're writing grant proposals
Sure.
and trying to fund that lab.
Sure.
And she kind of liked the hands-on stuff, so this is kind of a good mix for her.
Wow.
But again,
Brewing is pretty much basically chemistry.
So
it's very much science.
when
yeah.
kids say, "What is this science going to do for me in the future?" Hello,
get your
kids.
beer.
Are you really going to ask that?
Yep.
And I'm not promoting, by the way, drinking underage. You got to wait till you're 21. But come on, chemistry, science, it does serve you if you want it to.
It absolutely does, and everything about brewing is chemistry and biochemistry.
Yeah.
And there's a decent amount of math just in terms of when we do a 5-gallon batch, upscaling it to 310 or 620 gallons.
Sure.
There's a lot of math there. And then there's a lot of art, too, which
There is art.
what Heidi liked a lot because she could infuse a lot of her cooking knowledge and knowledge of different herbs and spices. We have a honey, hibiscus flowers beer that we make. We
And this is
have one with saffron in it.
And does she grow this stuff, or she purchases it, or
Mostly we purchase it because you can't grow it in the kind of quantities that
Sure.
we usually need.
Sure.
And also we're heavily regulated FDA wise,
right.
and we're considered a food producer, so we have to be
Wow.
able.
It's kind of like one of these things. It's kind of like good but bad.
There's good and bad, but we have to be able to say the source of our ingredients.
Sure, that's a good thing overall.
Yeah,
That's a good
and
thing.
with Mary Shroom, there's plenty of people who think they can or are good at picking wild mushrooms, and ask us if we do that. The answer is absolutely not, because I don't want to kill anybody.
Mary Magic Mushroom
Yeah,
beer.
and so
And that would be the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Because the other case scenario is you drink that and you're dead.
we're heavily regulated for that reason, which most of those regulations are really don't annoy me, because I've seen too many people who I know would, if those regulations weren't in place, they would make stupid beers and do stupid things.
Absolutely.
So I understand why they're there.
So you
but-
understand the nature of sinful humanity, where people might actually do something that's not good for them or wise to do?
Yeah, well, and how much of it is necessarily sinful, I don't know, because some people would just say, this sounds like a good idea. I think I'm smarter than everybody else, so I
Sure.
can pick the correct mushrooms.
Heidi!
And I'm going to make a wild mushroom beer, and everybody will love it.
Heidi waved. Sorry.
And probably everybody would, until they pick the wrong mushroom.
Right, and by sin, I don't mean of the eternal consequence sin. I mean of the missed the mark.
No, and I guess that could be...
The Greek word sin, which means here's the bullseye I kind of hit over here. So the bullseye is get decently buzzed, and over here is mushroom that kills you.
Right.
That sort of thing.
But if you want to get into sin, I mean...
You could.
It's kind of arrogance
Yeah.
to assume you're always
Right.
picking the correct mushroom.
Right.
And so there's a certain amount of
And we'll get into
that.
some of this later.
Folks, now you know why we actually got into, besides the good beer, which you know us well enough. I mean, that was good enough reason. But now you know why we actually pulled angry Erick onto our show, and that's because he also has a good sense of theology, which is a good segue. So, Erick, tell us about that side of you.
Well, I don't know that I can say I personally have a theological side, but
Sure.
my grandfather on both sides were Methodist ministers in Africa, and my grandmothers on both sides were nurses at missions in Africa, and then my father went to seminary. In the end, he ended up becoming instead of becoming a Methodist minister, he became he went into teaching and became a professor of religious studies. I think he always, my grandfather on his side was one of the people who had, and my grandmother on that side, who had unquestioning faith. And I don't think he ever felt he measured up to that.
Sure.
So it was hard for him to imagine himself being a minister. He did from time to time at my church that I grew up in. He would cover for the minister and do sermons when they were on vacation or out.
Sure.
Otherwise, but I
So
feel like he
lay speaking of the sort.
yeah. And was always, highly thought of in terms
Sure.
of when he did preach, but
Well, he had that education.
he had the education,
Sure.
he had the knowledge, and I think he was probably setting too high a standard for himself, because
Sure.
I've met plenty of ministers who I don't think are
Who falls short of him.
100% unquestioning devotion and faith.
Yep.
But,
But you know what?
there's a scale for everything.
The truest people of faith, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, Sal, but the truest people of faith, I think, struggle the most with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes, while he may not have served at the pulpit, no doubt he served God and his faith in the ways that he felt
I was going to say, it sounds like,
worthy of doing,
as a professor of religion, that's a ministry in itself.
Professor
It
of
is.
religion is
It
a
is.
ministry unto itself, yeah.
And I think probably some of the folks who probably have the most critical judgment, but also critical thinking placed upon their faith, are preachers' kids,
Yeah.
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 because they see not only the fact that their parents are lifted up on this pedestal of this is an example of faith, and they, as preachers' kids, see no, that's my dad.
Talk to my kids
mom,
about it.
yeah.
They'll tell you how perfect I am.
There's a lot of
Sure.
pressure.
A lot of pressure there, but they also can see the struggles that those people have with faith, and that manifests in their own faith.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't mind that scraping sound. That's me picking fuzz off because it's just annoying me. But yeah, and that, so here we are. I just want to point out the irony here. Here we are sitting in a brew house over a couple of beers, maybe few.
We'll say
We'll
a
say.
couple.
Couple few,
The correct amount of beer.
Hey, listen, you who are watching can count how many there were. But anyway, here we are over beer, sitting in a brew house with a maybe not practicing Methodist, but somebody with a Methodist background who understands the Methodist Church, understands prohibition, understands the Methodist push for temperance, and also understands the short-sightedness of that. There is a truth to it in that, and I firmly, as a Methodist pastor, would never serve alcohol at communion, because I don't know who has an alcohol problem, who doesn't have an alcohol problem.
Yep.
And I wouldn't want to be the idiot that caused somebody to fall off the bandwagon and literally fall off the wagon, I should say, and literally fall into sin as a result of me being stupid. So I'm perfectly okay with the Methodist stance of no alcohol in the church, grape juice. I totally get that. But I think also any good can also be taken to an extreme. Not everybody has an alcohol problem. John Wesley himself had beer and wine regularly, but moderately. You know, he wasn't getting drunk, but he had it on a regular basis moderately. And he wasn't against beer, ale, or wine. He was against, let's say, gin, which people were giving to their babies to numb their hunger so that they wouldn't cry because they couldn't afford anything else. So John Wesley saw that as a real problem, and he wasn't blaming the people doing it. He was blaming the industries creating it, and I get that. But John Wesley also enjoyed a good brew, enjoyed a good wine, enjoyed good tea. Not sure if he drank coffee, probably not, but he was a Brit through and through. Mm-hmm. And here we are in his spirit celebrating the fact that alcohol is neither good nor bad. It is what it is, and it either can be used for the good or it can be used for the bad, depending on the person.
Sure.
And Jesus himself had no problem turning 7 large vats of water, large vats, not like a 750 milliliter bottle, 7 vats of wine, 7 of these.
Yes.
These right here filled with wine.
His first miracle in the gospel.
So while we don't want to cause people to stumble and fall into sin, we also don't want to get too high on our horses either. And with that said, I say cheers.
Cheers. If Jesus can make the good stuff, so can we.
And by the way, not only did John Wesley, who it's the most shocking of them because you think of Methodism as anti-alcohol because of the last 100 years or so, 150 years maybe, but so was Martin Luther, who had his own personal brewer, his wife was a brewer. His wife was a brewer and would brew him beer that he could sit around the table and talk. He had round table talks, actually, where they would drink beer and talk. And most of that was probably a good thing. Some of that, especially towards Jewish people, probably was not a good thing, but that was maybe the beer talking. Still, it's not anti-Christian to enjoy a good beer, and that's kind of what I wanted to highlight. Now, if you are somebody who struggles with beer, somebody who may not be able to have, maybe one is too many and one is not enough all at the same time, then there are other options for you. In fact, in our last episode for September, Blake pointed out a couple of non-alcoholic options that actually are top-of-the-line craft-type stuff. Not your Budweiser, watered-down tasting Pilsner, but actual, stouts and good stuff. Yep. Check that out, it's what works for you. But if you do enjoy a good brew, and then I think this is a perfect opportunity to recommend that you hop on down to Angry Erick and don't get mad about it. Just get angry.
Just get angry.
You know what I'm saying?
And not to be left out as the Presbyterian, John Calvin had in his contract a stipend for, I think it's 1,000 or 3,000 gallons of wine.
This proves John Calvin, by the way, was superior to John Wesley.
That's right.
He understood that wine and theology go together. Yeah, I mean, they do right from the Last Supper onward.
Yep.
Well, I mean,
and
I don't want to get too historical about it.
Here comes temperance.
But there's a good shot that a lot of the beer and wine discussion is because we did not have good ways of purifying and having clean water.
True.
Yeah.
And when you make beer or you make wine, well, with beer you boil the wort. So while they did not know it at the time, they were killing any bacteria in there. So even little kids drank very low alcohol version of beer. I don't recommend that. If you've seen their desks and houses, they did not grow to full size. They were very tiny at the time.
It stunted their growth.
It stunted their growth. But that's what they did.
True
because
story.
Drinking water out of the River Thames was going to give you cholera and
you
kill
had a choice of being 5 foot or 4 foot something to 5 foot, or the choice of being dead. You choose.
Right.
I personally would pick being shorter. Yeah.
That's a good point. Historically, up until, 150 years ago,
Totally.
our systems of sanitation and water filtration were not what they are today, so legitimately this was the more healthy, safer thing to drink.
And it also kept your bread from spoiling too quick.
There's a
Which is
reason they
how
call
the
this,
early priests the monks came up with it, because it was like, well, we could make bread out of our grain, or we could store it this way, and it doesn't go bad. In fact, the more bad it goes, the better it is.
Right.
And
you still have the calories, so you don't lose those.
And the protein and the nutrients that go into that. And actually, for the longest time, the government did not allow nutrition facts to go on beer cans because it would promote, they thought it would promote alcoholism, because it's actually a darn nutritious drink minus the alcohol.
Yeah.
If you take the alcohol out of it, this is, don't drink six cans of it, but, a can a day would not hurt you.
No.
I've actually seen,
In fact, a can a day with the alcohol would not hurt you.
I've actually seen, as a Lenten practice, someone who drank only beer for Lent and actually lost weight.
Lost weight only drinking beer. In fact, that may be my next Lenten practice. Just saying.
I thought you were supposed to give up something you love for Lent.
Yes, well,
I'm wondering who these people are.
I love other things besides.
How creative they were.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love other things besides beer, so it doesn't say give up everything you love for Lent, just something you love for Lent. So I guess I'll have to give up, I don't know, coffee. Beer for Lent. Or something like that, I don't know. But you know what? This is a good place for us to end. Any last words for posterity's sake?
I don't think so. Stay safe, everybody.
Stay safe. Drink
We're still in a
responsibly.
pandemic. Drink reasonably and responsibly, and
support your local craft.
And visit the frick out of Angry Erick if you're in the location. If not, support your local brewer.
And if you think you don't like beer, it's probably because you've only had the beer that the big three have thrown at you.
Amen.
There's plenty of different varieties.
There is. And I will say, as Eric was pointing out before, having worked in Sussex County for the last 7 years, this is a county that leans red, although more and more the common denominator, the common thing that brings people together is more and more I see Angry Erics.
Yeah.
So, craft brew brings people together.
It makes them realize the simplicity of just loving community and not caring. I mean, it's important to care about political issues. I'm not saying don't. They're important. But they're not so important that we should destroy the relationships we have. Because you know what? No politician knows you even exist. Period.
Yep.
Nope.
Stick with the people who are going to be there for you.
They don't care.
They don't care.
But that person across the street who might be your neighbor, who's maybe isn't the same political bent as you, they're going to be there when your basement floods. They're going to come over and help you clean out the basement and help you. And
they're going to bring you a casserole when someone dies.
Absolutely. It's not the fault of the politician. I don't want to blame the politician. They don't know you exist, so they can't care that you exist. They don't know you exist, but your neighbors, your friends, your family do.
I mean, we can blame some politicians.
We can blame some politicians, and over some good beer at that. So
on both sides of the aisle.
On both sides of the aisle.
Some are to blame.
Equal opportunity offenders. Rock on, folks. In the meantime, drink it up responsibly, whether it's alcohol or not, and be excellent to each other.
And don't be a jerk.
Don't drink 12 beers. Don't drink 12 glasses of milk.
Amen. Amen.
Bad things will happen
And
either way.
12 glasses of water might be a problem. So, rock on. Be excellent to each other.
And don't be a jerkus giganticus.
Maximus. Rock on.
Thank you for having me on, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.